Hello, everybody, and welcome to Leapwell's monthly webinar series. This February, we're focusing on financial well-being. It's a very current and challenging topic for most of us, I would say. This short, practical 30-minute session today is really designed to provide you with some practical insights on checking and assessing your financial health, and also setting some financial goals, managing your debt, and as well as managing your budget. Our presenter today is John Van Ruden.
Hello.
Our resident, welcome John, our resident financial coach, and as well as talking about budgeting and setting goals, John will give us a brief overview of what a one-on-one financial coaching session entails, because here at Leapwell, we really understand, how financial well-being impacts our mental and emotional health. So we provide one-on-one counselling sessions to employees within our client organisations through the EAP services. So if you wanted to get in touch to book a session with John, or to find out a little bit more about any of the other support services we have, our contact details will be displayed at the end. And with that, I will hand over to John. If anybody has any questions, please pop them in the chat, and we will maybe ask them throughout, but also there will be a Q&A at the end if anybody would like to find out any further information. If you don't feel comfortable asking any questions here, please reach out to us via the contact details, and we can answer anything you might have. So with that, over to you, John.
Thanks, Sally. Thanks very much indeed. And it's it's a real pleasure being part of the Leapwell counselling services that are offered. Basically, the financial coaching sessions that I do with clients is, as Sally said, it's all about making sure that you can relieve your financial stress. And I would suggest that financial stress is probably one of the biggest issues facing most people. As Sally mentioned before, it impacts on well-being, psychological well-being. It can even impact on relationships. So basically, if you can actually reduce your financial stress and improve financial well-being, it will actually create a greater peace of mind and then have a positive impact on your life more broadly. So it's all about overcoming financial stress. And it's also all about looking at what your personal and financial goals might be. Where do you want to be in 6 months? Where do you want to be in a year's time or 5 years' time? What is it you want to achieve for yourself? And usually there's money involved, finances involved in actually getting to where you want to be. And the other big thing about it, of course, is that by doing this, you will then be in control of your own life. You can actually dictate, if you like, where you want to be and what you want to achieve, rather than being a victim of financial circumstances. So it's taking a proactive approach in actually trying to improve your situation. And the whole aim of this is basically deal with finances, just get on with your own life. Life's to be enjoyed, and we don't want the anchor of finances sort of holding us back. So a bit about my background. I'm a bit of a jack of all trades. I've done many things over the years, but the biggest chunk of my experience has been as a financial advisor for 22 years. And more specifically, in recent times, it's to do with financial coaching and financial education. I've had the privilege of working for a very large Australian travel company for quite a few years. And over about 13 years, we spent, our role was purely just to assist our staff to achieve their goals and to get on ahead and achieve what they want to achieve. And we've been able to, it's been very gratifying for me and people I worked with to see that people could go on and actually live the life they wanted to live. So yes, assisted thousands of clients over the years, both here in Australia and overseas. So with that experience, looking forward to being able to help people that join the Leapwell services to actually achieve the same thing. Thanks, Sally. Okay, so what is financial coaching? Well, effectively, you can sort of think of me as, if you like, as a life coach or a personal trainer, something like that. We're basically it's all about giving you the resources and the understanding and the education to be able to make the best of your situation and achieve your goals, as we mentioned before. So the first thing we do in a financial coaching session is to identify what are your financial concerns. Do you have major debts that are weighing you down? Are you not being able to make ends meet? Do you have major obligations that you don't know how to deal with? So it's identifying what those concerns are, and then from those financial concerns, then looking at, okay, well, we understand this. What do you want to achieve in your life, as we said before, over the next 12 months or 5 years or whatever it might be? So we'll actually sort of go through a process of trying to establish what your financial goals are. And then what we'll do is we'll look at your financial position. So, what do you own? What assets do you have? Do you have a house? Do you have a car? Do you have a second property? Whatever it might be, what assets do you have? And against that, we look at, what liabilities you have, what debts do you have? So, do you have credit card debts? Do you have other lender debts, mortgages? Do you have car loans? What other obligations do you have? And then from that, we can sort of establish what your net financial position is, with the aim to actually build on that financial position as we go. Then what we do is we have a look at your cash flow. So another word for that is look at your budget. So looking at your cash flow, we'll be looking at income coming in. We'll be looking at, salaries, income from other sources. It may be from government sources potentially. It may be investment income. It may be income from different sources, as I said. And we'll also look at, what your day-to-day expenses are. Looking at your utility bills, your debt responsibilities, your lifestyle costs, how you, entertainment, groceries, all those sorts of things. We're looking at those sorts of things, and then look at tips that we can suggest for you to actually take more control of your cash flow. And my experience in the past with a lot of people is that cash flow outwardly has been negative, more money going out than coming in. And with applying some tips and discussing, different options, we've found a lot of cases we can actually turn that around over time into a positive cash flow, and therefore building up, a net positive financial position. Another important part of that is looking at developing a banking strategy to help organise your income and to help your savings ability. So the banking strategy is really important. Where do you have your income paid into, and where do you have your expenses paid out from? And simply by structuring a banking strategy in a particular way, it means that you can actually have things happen automatically for you. And we typically suggest maybe a few different bank accounts for different things. But if you can set that up, knowing what you can and can't afford to spend, then that can free up worrying about whether there's enough money in the account to pay for the bill that's around the corner. Another important thing that we talk about is improve your understanding of superannuation and the choices you'd have under superannuation. For many people, eventually over time, superannuation is going to become your biggest asset outside your family home. So it's important to actually have an understanding of how that works, um, and have an understanding of basically how superannuation is invested and the choices you have to actually control the investment choices that are available through the superannuation fund. So that's a really important thing to consider. And also superannuation as well. It may well be that you have various superannuation funds. Doesn't make sense potentially to roll those superannuation funds into one. So we can give you some tips and some counselling with regards to that. And another really important thing is to understand your options to protect yourself, protect you and your family. So look at, what do you have in place to protect your life? What do you have in place to protect the income that you earn? And I'd suggest probably your income is one of your biggest assets that you have, your ability to earn income. And if something happened to you, became totally disabled or disabled for a period of time, what do you have in place to actually protect that income earning ability? And also look at protecting your assets, just making sure that effectively you have sufficient cover to protect, house, car, that sort of thing. And having reviewed all that, we then look at preparing a financial action plan. So, if you like, a to-do list to make sure that you can actually um, relieve the financial stress. So, the to-do list might be one or two items. It might be 10 items that might need to be done to get you on the right track. So, Sally, the next slide, please. Okay, so one of the most important things is to take control of your income. So we're looking at that dirty word, doing a budget. A lot of people shy away from doing a budget, but I would suggest to you that once you go down the path and you have a clear view as to what's going in and what's going out, it certainly is one of the first steps to actually relieving financial stress. So in doing a budget, what we'd be looking at doing is identifying your regular bills. What do you pay for power, for phone, internet, streaming accounts, mortgage repayments, car repayments, all those really major bills that you have coming in. Also identify what your living expenses are. So, what do you spend regularly on food, going out, coffees, going to the cinema, going to concerts, those sorts of things. What do you spend on just day-to-day living expenses, basically? And as I said, looking at entertainment as well, but also looking at, what you spend on groceries on a weekly basis. So what we try and do is identify those things and then develop a banking strategy effectively to control those expenses. And what we recommend many clients to do is to physically have in their banking environment maybe two or maybe three bank accounts that effectively are organised so that you put buckets of money into each of those accounts. And one of those accounts would be, let's say, designated purely for your entertainment expenses. One may be purely for your bills. Another account may be designated for your living expenses. So in a way, back in the old days, your grandparents, my grandparents, they may have had different envelopes or different tins, if you like, where they put money to pay the milkman or put money to pay specific things, school fees or whatever it might be. In effect, we're doing something along those lines, but we're just using our banking strategy to become those buckets of money so that when we know that we want to go out or we want to, we're going down to the supermarket to buy groceries, we know that we've got the funds there to be able to do those things and spend that money in a non-stressful way, knowing that basically, we can afford to do these things. Another important thing is in going through a budget, is to identify the savings potential that you may have, and basically then on a monthly basis, then setting up looking at a savings strategy, which could well be a separate savings account that automatically every month when your income comes in, the savings that have been identified, that gets put automatically and directly into the savings account. And it becomes automatic, so you're not consciously having to make that decision every month. Should I? Shouldn't I? It goes in the savings account and it's there. And in the event that something untoward comes up in your life, there's always some nasty surprises. With money in the savings account, it's potentially there for you to pick up, to overcome these financial stresses and to move on. Or hopefully, the savings is there to potentially build up a really good buffer for the future. Another important thing in going through a budget too, and this is something we will do, is particularly if we find that the cash flow is negative, more money going out than coming in, is going through the budget in a bit more detail and really asking the question, well, is this a need or is this a want? And if we put some items in the wants category as opposed to needs, then just ask the difficult question, well, do you really, can you do without these wants? And just focus on the needs. And if we can actually, so that could be a big difference in turning a negative cash flow situation into a positive cash flow situation. And last but not least, as far as the budget is concerned, once the strategy is put in place and we've got a saving strategy happening as well, and we've asked those hard questions about needs and wants, well, then it's a matter of celebrating the successes. So if you're feeling much better about yourself and about your financial situation, we'll go out and celebrate. I don't know, go out to dinner, celebrate your successes, and then move on to the next goal that you're trying to achieve. Okay, so just some tips with regards to budgeting. You may have heard these before, but they're very, very true. We all know that the cost of living is increasing all the time, and particularly groceries and foodstuffs is probably one of the biggest increases that we've seen over the last few years. And you've probably heard it before, but taking a shopping list to the supermarket is a fantastic idea. And it's a way of making sure that you don't overdo the spending at the groceries that you otherwise have put money aside for. Another thing too is to plan your meals. So if you plan your meals, then effectively it's a great opportunity again to save. And also in planning your meals and also maybe cooking for a couple of nights, cooking that will basically, give you meals for a few nights. Again, a great way to save, but also it means you don't have to come home at night and have to think of what to cook next, so to speak. So anyway, that is a really good tip. Buy in bulk. You can certainly save quite a bit by buying things in bulk and looking for the specials that come up from time to time. My wife is, she has a real laser focus when she goes to the supermarket, and I do too, mind you, we both shop. We have real laser focus on specials that come up. So buying bulk and looking for specials is a great tip. Another thing too is entertainment can be a pretty hefty expense for many people. Entertain at home. 9 times out of 10, entertaining at home can be a much cheaper way of going, and it could probably more fun as well. And you could probably hear other people talking to you, entertaining at home, as opposed to trying to yell over a noisy restaurant or a noisy bar. And of course, again, shop around. If you're looking at buying, probably larger items, just shop around. Just make sure that you're getting the best possible deal you can. And there's so many different ways in which we can do that nowadays, particularly, looking on the internet and what have you. So definitely do that. And last one is, look, when I was a student, when my wife and I were students, we didn't have a lot of money to scratch together. So we spent a lot of time in op shops and secondhand places and that sort of thing. And whenever we travel around, we go to country towns, the first thing we'll do is we'll find a bakery, we'll find a cafe that makes good coffee. And then we'll cruise by the local op shop. And it's amazing what you can find in op shops. We always look at the clothes racks and we look for, the designer labels and that sort of thing. So it's amazing what you can find in op shops or secondhand places, household items, clothes, a whole range of things. And they can be cheaper and high quality as well. So, it's a good tip as far as that's concerned. Okay, so savings. So we've been through the budget. We've identified that basically you have the ability to put some money aside. It might be $10 a week. It might be $100 a month, whatever it might be. We've identified some savings ability. So one of the first things we would do is, as I said before, is setting up a separate savings account. And what you do is organize to automatically have money put into that savings account, maybe transferred from one of your other accounts directly into your savings account, and that it stays there until you need it. So that's probably a really good way of actually getting the savings happening. And as I said before, automate those savings as well, so it happens automatically. You don't get involved. The more you get involved, the greater the chance is that it might not happen. So we don't want you to trip yourself up. So make it happen automatically. Now, if you're in a situation, if you have a mortgage against your home, and if you have an offset account attached to your mortgage, then one of the best ways of saving money is to leave as much money in your offset account as you possibly can. So effectively what you're doing by leaving money in your offset account, essentially what you're doing is you're earning your mortgage interest rate, if it's 4%, 5%, whatever it might be, you're effectively earning that rate of return because you're not paying that on your mortgage loan. So that is a fantastic way of actually saving money. So what it might be is, for instance, is you might get your pay paid directly into your offset account, which makes really, really good sense. But still making sure that you have other accounts that you then draw back from that to make sure that you can pay your bills as well. So there's still some sort of design around that. Another great way of saving, similar to talking about the offset account, is to pay off your debts quicker. So if we identify savings, maybe what you do is you just increase your repayment off your credit card, you increase your repayment off your personal loans, increase your repayments off your mortgage if you don't have any other debts where you pay a higher interest rate. Now, if you're in the fortunate situation where you don't have any debts to deal with, and you have savings ability, and if you don't need those funds for quite some time, then you might want to consider placing money into managed funds or other long-term savings or long-term investments. And these are investments where basically you might be investing in assets outside of cash. So it could be funds that might invest in shares or property or some other form of investment, which basically over time tend to give you a better rate of return than what simply having money in the bank does. So that's potentially another way of building up your savings. Just an example, my sisters, I've got them into a Australian share fund about in the mid 90s, and I was going through my sister's financial, their assets and liabilities a few weeks ago, and they told me they had $90,000 saved. And I said, where's that from? And it just turns out it was that investment, which I completely forgot about. And they just kept paying $150 a month for 15 years into this, and it just built up to $90,000. So you can do that sort of thing with savings and be pleasantly surprised down the track. Another option for savings is consider increasing your superannuation contributions. There's tax benefits in doing that, but also it just means you'll have a bigger nest egg for eventually when you do get to retirement age. But having said that, though, any extra money you put into superannuation, effectively, you won't see that until you get to retirement age, or age 60 at the very earliest. But another fantastic way of actually saving tax effectively and also making money work really hard for you. Okay. Debt management. So getting your debt under control. So the first thing to do is uh, just make sure you understand what you owe. How much do you owe to various different creditors that you might have, family creditors, what have you. So that's the first place to start. And if you're not too sure how to deal with that, what the next step is, get help. Through Leapwell, you can get in contact with me, and we can actually walk through your debts and talk about how those debts can be managed, as I mentioned before. There's also lots of financial counselling services out there that you potentially could go to as well, that can walk you through some ways of overcoming the debts you may have. An important thing that you need to look at is going through your cash flow is what can you afford to pay on your debts? Are you struggling to pay your debts? And if so, okay, well, what options are there to maybe go back to maybe some of the creditors you have to talk about ways of maybe making the amount you pay regularly. Is there some way of actually maybe modifying that in the short term, but with the understanding that it might mean you might take longer to pay that back in the longer term. So, what can you afford to pay, and then and what do you then concentrate on with regards to which debts to pay off? Another important part of debt management, again, is looking at your cash flow and just look at where can you cut expenditure. So going back to the wants and needs and prioritizing some of those needs as well. So cutting back on expenditure can mean that you can potentially look at increasing the amount you can pay off some of your debts. Again, looking at the cash flow, we'd be looking at prioritizing the debts or the bills you have. What debts, what bills are the most important that you need to address? And I would suggest to you things such as utilities, phone, internet, well, phone particularly, but mortgages, personal loans, those sorts of things, the things that really, council rates potentially, those sorts of things are really important and will be very high on the priority list. There may be other debts that maybe fall lower down the list, but effectively what you're aiming to do is to make sure that you can meet the debt requirements of those high priorities first and foremost. And another thing too is to, if you have a range of debts, psychologically, it's best to get rid of the smallest debts first. If you can get rid of those small debts that are priorities, get those out of the way, that then gives you breathing space to actually then attack the other debts as well. Having multiple debts is like having juggling with multiple balls in the air. If you can reduce the number of balls that you're juggling in the air, then effectively you're going to be much more effective, I would suggest, at dealing with your other debts and getting your debts under control. And again, as I said before, with successes in paying off small debts and working your way through to the bigger debts, again, celebrate successes. Go to town and celebrate that. I think that's an important part of financial management. Okay, so apart from utilising the services that we offer here at Leapwell with our financial coaching, there's a myriad of tools out there that you can look at that can give you some tips, ideas, and also there's some calculators and planners that you can use to actually get you on the right path to financial freedom. So the Australian government has a site called MoneySmart, moneysmart.gov.au. So it's funded by the Australian government, and there's budget planners there, there's mortgage calculators there, and there's personal loan calculators there, and there's also a calculator to do with superannuation as well. So it's a fantastic site. They're not trying to sell anything. It's purely a service to the Australian public on getting finances in order and to ensure that you have good financial well-being. And I think that wraps up for me, Sally.
It does. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thanks, John. That was really insightful for me. I have a big page of notes here.
Right.
Something for me that I think I'm going to head straight to is that wants and needs list, and how hard it is to be realistic about what is a want and what is a need.
That's right.
Do people find that really difficult?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That's the kind of the first step, and that's I think you know, something that comes to mind for me is getting the gardener over to mow the lawn.
Right. Okay. I've got some stories there, but there you go.
Nice to have, but do we need it? Maybe not. Yeah. Thank you so much. That was really insightful. I'm sure a lot of people are going to get a lot from that, and I can imagine how beneficial it's going to be for people who have one-on-one sessions with you.
Yep.
I'll give us a couple of minutes. We do have some questions in.
Right.
Oh, some long questions. I'll just read them out to you, John, and if you can answer as we go. Thanks for the presentation. One issue I have with buying in bulk is being a single person. Buying in bulk sometimes isn't an option as I can't get through the food quick enough.
Yeah.
I found a good tip though is definitely bulk food prep on the weekend. Also helps with not having to buy lunch at work.
That's
Where's
right.
the question? The other challenge is also some credit card debt, which just never seems to disappear.
Yeah.
I would have always thought that facing the biggest debt was more important as the interest rate would be more. Is that true?
Look, I think that with the biggest debts, in a lot of ways, it works the other way. The biggest debts are usually mortgages, which generally has a lower rate than compared to a personal loan. Credit cards are probably the worst. The credit card rates are really quite outrageous, really.
Yeah.
And for many people, credit cards are probably one of the smallest debts. But I think there's the financial side as well, but there's also the psychological side.
Yeah.
Where yes. A bigger debt might have a higher interest rate than maybe a smaller debt, but if you can clear that smaller debt, you've had a win.
Yeah.
And basically, once you've had that win, you feel good about yourself, and then what you're paying against that smaller debt then turbocharges you to maybe then attack the next debt. So it's a bit of a mind game as well.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it really does, and I think that's exactly how I'm going to tackle a couple of the debts that I have.
Right.
Just get rid of those small, student loans and things like that. Just get rid of those and then tackle no student loan.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. Well, student loans. I mean, the interest rate on that. Well, if it's a small debt,
yeah.
Let's say if it's something you can easily tackle, by all means.
Yeah.
But if it's still relatively large-ish, you're paying a very low rate on that compared to maybe your credit card.
Right.
So yes and no, depending.
Okay.
Depends.
Maybe we need a session, John.
Oh, maybe we do.
Okay, I have another question here. I want to increase my super contributions this year.
Yep.
I also want to invest in some money for my children. What do you think is the best bet to set up a long-term investment for a young child? Something they would be able to access later.
Sure. So basically, I mentioned before about managed funds. So a managed fund basically is where you have a fund manager that basically invests money on your behalf or your child's behalf. And that can be invested in things such as Australian shares or international shares, or it could be property investments within the fund. So potentially through these funds, you could own a shopping centre or be a part owner of a shopping centre, let's say, or something like that, or an office block. So that's a way it can be done. You can start with a relatively small amount of money, and add to it on a regular basis as well. So they're the sorts of things that are possible. So what I can do as a financial coach, I can point out the sorts of things that people can actually look at, and then it would be a case of then approaching. It could be through a bank, let's say, or it
Hmm.
could be through another financial institution, to then go and look at those products with the understanding of the different investment options that may be available that I can talk through. But
Hmm.
ultimately, it would be the choice of whoever is that asked the question to go and then actually make that investment.
Yeah,
So I can
yeah,
actually point in the right direction,
yeah,
and then you need to go into the next step.
yeah, yeah. Great. What, you can't do it all for us, John?
No, afraid not. No.
Okay, well, that's all the questions that we have. Um, if anybody would like to get in touch with John through Leapwell, our contact details should be on the screen, but we can also provide them in the recording, and the slides later on. Um, Thank you so much, John. That was really,
No,
I found
pleasure.
it really insightful. Great questions, and hopefully we can help some more people in the near future.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks so much, John. Have a great day,
Thank you.
everybody.
All the best.